Once upon a time, I walked into a crime scene. Now, you should know that I'm not, nor was I ever, some kind of detective or investigator. And although I enjoy taking photos, I've never worked as a forensic photographer. At the time, about 20 years ago now, I was a 28-year-old woman who'd had too much to drink and been convinced it would be a good idea to go into that house. I was freaking out as we got into the tiny sports car owned by a friend of my sister, seriously freaking out as it traveled through the gate of Warner Robins Air Force Base. As the guards waved us through, and especially as we neared the house, my chest was buzzing like a crowded hive, my breath short and rapid. At that point, I'd been having flashbacks of that house for months, running through the series of events that took place that 4th of July night in 2004. But they weren't really flashbacks, since I wasn't there on the night it happened. They were more like visions of the details I'd been told by the head legal counsel assigned by the Air Force while sitting at that Starbucks near my parents' house. I knew the murder weapon. I knew who'd done it. I knew that a third person had survived, barely, but that my sister and brother-in-law did not. I knew that the airman that they had hung out with on several occasions, a friend of a friend, donned his military fatigues and hid in the bushes with a hunting knife until they came home. I had run through the scene almost every night before I could fall asleep, most nights aided by large volumes of cheap white wine or cans of Coors Light. I'd also told the legal team and my family that I would not be going into that house with them that night, that I was way too visual, that seeing blood splatter all over their sweet little house, the first home they'd ever shared as a married couple, would be too much for me, that I could never unsee the house as a crime scene. But there I was, sitting on the street in front of the familiar blue house, decorated on all sides with yellow plastic tape. Although it warned, "Do not cross," we did cross. There were about a dozen of us in total, some who had visited as their home, others who arrived only to a crime scene. If I'm being honest, I can't recall the conversation at that hotel bar leading up to the decision to travel to my sister's former home that night. This felt very different from the stories you hear about cleaning out someone's closet or bedroom after they die. I already had Jamie's wedding band on a chain around my neck. And over the months since they died, the legal team had retrieved photo albums and other items of sentimental value, which they would deliver to us on their visits. But now it was our turn to gather any items that we wanted to keep. We were told to bring along a suitcase to collect anything we wanted to take from the house. As we entered, I was most concerned with the smell and the roaches that scattered as we flipped on a switch in the kitchen. I don't want to look at the living room floor where I knew there would be a puddle of blood where Andy had died. I'd been a person who watched hundreds of hours of Law & Order as a college student and read books about serial killers. Clue was one of our favorite board games in our adolescence. But this was different. This was the hallway where my sister stood in terror, the bedroom where she slumped behind the door, gasping her final breaths. I was in the place where she died, terrified and alone, but it wasn't scary. The blood had been exposed to air for so long that it looked more like brown, crackly mud scattered about the house. There were smiles and laughter as we found items we recognized. Bittersweet memories as we noticed the board games we always played together. Sadness when I saw the boxes of books and DVDs already packed for their departure from the Air Force Base, which had been scheduled for 2 weeks after that fateful night. Just 2 weeks away from moving into my apartment with me in Chicago. But those boxes were never placed on a U-Haul, never left the state of Georgia, never got unpacked in that 3-flat apartment down the street from Wrigley Field. Instead, I packed up all my belongings in Chicago. I moved back in with my parents in Houston. I sat in a courtroom for 6 weeks with the man who killed them until the jury delivered the verdict, guilty with an accompanying death sentence. I look back and wonder how on earth I survived all those experiences in my 20s. Nowadays, I tell my young daughters that brave is being scared, but doing it anyway. I don't know if I was brave that night I rolled an oversized Samsonite into a crime scene or just drunk off my ass. But I do know that the need to replay that scene of their murder every night before falling asleep disappeared after I went inside that house. After I replaced agonizing fear with the support of family and an incredible team of professionals, after a good chuckle at the Karma Sutra book one of the lawyers found on a top shelf that we slipped into the bottom of a suitcase to dispose of later, it was no longer a crime scene, but my sister's first grown-up home, the place where she and Andy hosted barbecues and played cards and started their life as a married couple. Sometimes it's true that the only way is through, and we're braver than we believe. I always rolled my eyes at those inspirational posters of the 90s, all that Pollyanna, look on the bright side, gratitude shit. But as I close the gap on 50 years of being human, my eye rolling has decreased with what I now recognize as truth. Sometimes the hardest thing is to sit with those painful emotions, to feel the fear in my body, to name it, and to move through it.